No, but sing out. Any thoughts, heckles or questions or observations? Anything to help nourish the conversation in your deliberations today?
So hands up if you've got any questions. Certainly Hall and Oates couldn't have delivered that with more energy.
Well, can I have one? Mick, any reflections, sir? Thoughts? Have I gone... So I'm an independent person who has to get fired by the Governor-General. So that brings with a degree of freedom. Before Mick answers, just remember one other thing too. We live in the national environment. Okay? Now, I know whether it's... And I jotted down... Your code currently has district provisions on Greater Perth, Hunter Valley, Big Rivers, Northwest Victoria, Lower Murray. South Australia is renowned for doing its South Australian thing. That might offer some other options, a state-based solution into tribunals. I wouldn't recommend it, but I'm just putting it forward that this isn't the only conversation in town. South Australia is the only state that has its own franchising legislation. Thankfully, it doesn't get used very much because we do what we do and the feds have stepped in. But if it's that bad, if it's a quintessentially South Australian issue, if you can avail yourselves of administrative tribunals, the great services that Narissa and her agency offers, that's another option. Now, that'll only please some of you, and there'll be other conversations needed in other jurisdictions, and I don't think it's a durable solution. But if you're looking for options, it would be unwise of you not to recognise that that is an alternative.
No, thanks, Bruce. I think that's a very good Dirty Boots perspective of the reality of doing business. I think particularly where it comes to disputes, Bruce's office and obviously Narissa's at a state level see hands-on how those play out and what happens in them. I do think it's worth keeping in mind there can be a sort of a rising tides lifts all the boats effect arising from codes, in that even where there's not disputes, for example, enhanced transparency or other provisions, as we saw in the dairy industry with, for example, the mandatory release of prices on the 1st of June. That sort of lifted the degree of transparency right across the board and didn't involve a dispute as such. It just simply meant the industry operated a bit better because dairy farmers could get some transparency and visibility on what options they had. So it's certainly Bruce's and, as I said, Narissa's perspective on when things go to putt and you have to have a dispute, that they're at the pointy end of that. But I just emphasise that there can be that rising tide element to a code as well that's not necessarily directly related to disputes.
And the point Mick's making, you've picked up in your current code to a degree, codes should be the floor, not the ambition. And one of the things I keep urging the industry associations that I chaired was the code was really targeting the laggards, the people that are doing the wrong thing. Equally important can be the need to ventilate and blow sunshine and celebrate those that are really doing all that you could ask of them, those long-term relationships, and say, well, how come they can manage that and you can't? You know, I'm just saying there's a range of tools you can bring to try and bring about really what's cultural and behavioural change over time, and a lot of that is about really amplifying those that are doing what you hope people would do.
Terrific. I think we have a question over here.
Well, I'd like to thank both Mick and Bruce for giving some, I think, pretty decisive insights into this code business, but sort of taking it from the real world that I unfortunately live in, I think that having looked back that ACCC looked at the core issues of great prices, timing and that sort of thing, which were put up on the board today by various members as still the issues. This goes back to 2018 and then another look in 21. And another view of this would be that it's a sort of a slow-moving train wreck. And I wonder, is there another way out of this altogether? And I think you touched on it. And in the US, we had various commodities markets, Chicago Board of Trade. is there a mechanism whereby we have a grape futures price and a system there that everybody, it's transparent, you can sell crops ahead, etc.? So I just wondered if that's a totally different way to look at it.
Look, I like the thinking, and what you're also reflecting is examples that happen in other markets. So it's not like it's some fantasy. It happens elsewhere. If it was me, I'd be pushing on with that argument, because that seems to be at the heart of so much of the criticism of what's going on in some price transparency, even if it's real time now, would be a step forward. You know, an indication about what's likely to happen in the head. I think people would like that. But you know, again, you'd want to make sure there was flex around that and knowing what pushed prices up and down. In the milk industry, it's proteins and fats and things of that kind, which is a problem, because even under the milk supply agreements that Mick was talking about, you and I might be running a dairy farm. We have a good chat with a milk processor. They hand over the supply agreement. We test our milk, we get our systems right, all the QA's there, and we're like ready to go, and then no truck turns up because there's no undertaking to actually take the milk. It's just telling you what would happen if they did. And then the contract's not actually consummated until someone takes the milk. And so some of the disputes we've had to deal with have been around all that dance leading up, and then no one turned up to take the milk. And farmers have invested significantly in building up the systems, responding to issues that were raised with them by the milk processor, and then nothing happened. So that lack of predictability, and you know, and Mick touched on it, you know, usually with certainty being strengthened, there can be other trade-offs. You know, the price might be a very conservative one. It might be something you might want to negotiate around. I mean, it's a good point, but at the moment you don't have price transparency at all. The other thing, and I did this to be a little bit cheeky, let me read this again. In December 2021, winemakers are fast approaching their last chance to improve price transparency and shorten payment times. Now that's from the Commission. Well, is that last chance expired? Should you be talking to the Commission? Should you be talking to lawmakers? Should you be saying, look, we've given every opportunity and nothing's happened. We reckon that last chance is expired. Why don't lawmakers lean in a bit more now? And what does that look like? So actually shift the conversation to, we tried. I mean, as a former cabinet minister, these codes tend to escalate. Governments tend to go for what's called minimum effective intervention. They love industry to sort stuff out because they don't have to worry about RISs and parliamentary processes. I'll be honest with you, codes are slack law. Codes seek to emulate what should be legislated, but people really couldn't be bothered going through the grief and the rigour. And that's why they don't have the teeth that a law has, because they haven't gone through that same rigorous process for their enactment. That doesn't mean they can't be elevated, and in most cases these codes, so, well, that didn't work, okay, let's go to the next level. Well, that didn't work, well, let's go to the next level. Maybe you're at that point, sir. Maybe, and that's part of the conversation you have with the winemakers. Well, you've blown your chance. These are the two things you had to act on. You've done nothing. We're engaging with lawmakers now to see what's next, and then what's on the table might be the sorts of things that you're discussing.
I was just going to comment. The cotton industry is a very good example of an industry not dissimilar to grape growing that has a very strong forward market element to it. So most cotton producers would, for example, have maybe a third of their crop sold 2 years out, a third they might lock in once they get to flowering stage, and then they might run the last third as a spot, depending on what the market looks like. So that has an example, if you like, that shows absent a code, absent anything else, there's a very good and transparent forward market there. Of course, what is often perhaps not understood is it's all run off the back of the Chicago Board of Trade standards and processes and transaction volume that make it viable as a tradable, if you like, entity. And whilst they've tried those sorts of developments in Australia, for example, wool futures used to be very strongly traded back in the 50s and 60s. Typically, the conclusion has been that the volume required to make it a viable trade just hasn't necessarily been available in Australia, but perhaps in wine grapes that's not the case. There's a number of elements to that. One is the standards and the rules, if you like, of the Chicago Board of Trade basically underpin the forward cotton market in Australia, and that's quite an important aspect of why the industry works reasonably well here.
Yeah, one of the reasons I brought it up was that actually my wife in an earlier life was a commodities broker operating on that.
All those in favour of adding the wife to the board to help steer this through, say aye. All those against. It's interesting, when we were at the last stages of the Food and Grocery Code, your industry came to me and said, "Oh, we didn't think you'd get this far, Bruce. That's better than our code. Can we hook our wagon to it?" And I had to say, I've been out consulting around the country with you not on the table. It's now not a minute to midnight. It's 15 seconds to midnight. I can't fit you in and unilaterally change the scope of the code. Because that was at that stage where you saw, the supermarket chains building their own winemaking relationships and productive and capability, and they were going, well, that'll give us a bit of a cover, but as we mentioned earlier, you've got 79 signatories, I think you've got to the code at the moment. I reckon if you went around this room, you'd probably have more than 79 customers. And that's the other thing to think about, where these codes, I suppose, Mick, correct me if you think this is you've got a different view, but where they tend to have most teeth is you've got a few dominant players and then a large ecosystem operating around them, and the possibility for that adult-to-adult relationship to go parent-child very quickly is quite prominent. In the franchising industry, one of the problems that are there is that everyone says franchisor and they go, oh, Macca's. Well, sadly, most franchisors are no bigger than the franchisee. So you build this architecture assuming everyone's a 7-Eleven or a Macca's, and it's completely unfit for purpose for where the vast majority of our problems are. Now think about that in your situation. Probably some of the bigger winemakers, they've got experienced people who've got some, good commercial acumen, and, they understand the nature of the relationship, and they might be quite reasonable to deal with. The mid-tiers might get a little more muscular, and then for the little players, you're probably looking at each other thinking, is this okay? And this is what happens in franchising. And so we, Nick and the team in the assistance area end up almost being coaches to both parties in that relationship. And we have to explain to them what they have to do under the code because they've got no idea. There's a bit of an idea we should license franchise systems, and that's probably a good idea for larger systems. The smaller systems, they barely know the code exists. And they don't even know there's a franchise disclosure register. And we share this with them, and they go, oh, what's that about? I just thought I'd flog the use of something I dreamed up for a price, and someone told me I'm a franchise. So these are the things that you also have to think about, that you've got quite a eclectic range of people who might be buying your produce in scale, in sophistication, in the nature of their intended application of it. And that's something to bear in mind as well.
I think we have another question over here, sir.
Sure. Thank you. I just want to commend that whole discussion. That's been absolutely very relevant between the both of you, Mick and Bruce. That's really what today's all about for me. I actually, I'm not sure I'm going to call it the pleasure, but I actually sit on the code committee as well. So I've had some real life experience with that as a grape grower and a winemaker. Sit here today. I think just to your points, Bruce, there's actually been a lot of work done on price transparency since that report was put out by the ACCC. There's put quite a lot of money and resource gone into that. And for those growers who haven't seen that work, I really would encourage them to go out and find it. There's a lot of data that's now really available at the click of a finger. So get into it, understand it, because what that really does, goes back to your point, Bruce, is you can't resolve a market which is flawed. And I think, unfortunately, timing-wise, we're seeing a market which is very flawed, not driven by the wine industry itself, more driven by government intervention or government lack of intervention, call it interference, whatever it might be, which has triggered a market which needs a correction. So hopefully we're seeing a resolution around that. But to your point, Mick, a code which has been evolving over time, when that market correction occurs, all ships should rise on that tide. And all of a sudden the commercial realities that some of those leaders in our industry are showing with better payment terms, leadership in relation to the way they enforce and enact the code, will leave others behind. And I think we'll actually see a rectification of an industry as the market turns, because some leaders are taking that initiative, bigger companies, to make it appealing for growers to want to be suppliers to those people, rather than being suppliers to people who might not want to participate in a code environment. So great conversation.
Yeah, good. And really interesting point too. I'll let you in on one little secret. Our level of disputation is remarkably low when everyone's making money. It's when things turn cactus, everyone's looking for, hang on, what's happening here? During COVID, franchising was particularly challenging. But some of the franchise systems, and I think this is part of the thing that maybe you talk about around the dining room table, when things adjust, who takes the hit? Where's that sharing of risk, pain and adjustment? Is it all one party or the other? And we saw this, in during franchising, where some franchise systems said, gee, there's no one walking down the streets of Melbourne. That's terrible. Oh, suck it up, sunshine. Oh, by the way, you still owe us these fees. And they were happy just to march on and just have their franchisees being damaged from COVID. Others said, no, we will step in and we'll take a bit of the hit as well, because we value this relationship. It is symbiotic. Here's a range of things we will partner with you on just to get us all through this, because we need you there on the other side. So that's the other thing too, that that might be part of the conversation you could have within the industry. Sorry, sir.
One final question before we go for a break.
Thank you. Just a quick one, and I'll stand corrected, but isn't the prescribed payment here in South Australia state legislation rather than codes and other bits and pieces? So it's currently in legislation, and shouldn't we really be focusing on amending legislation if there's a yanks at the moment that the payment system's not working?
Yeah, I mean, I think Narissa's, am I putting words in your mouth saying you're ripe and ready to make that contribution later? But that is a distinctly South... you're probably not going to like me for this. South Australia has a tendency of leaning in more than other jurisdictions. And this is an example. You've got more laws coming out of your ears in South Australia than anyone can poke a stick at. Now that's quite good, because it shows the Parliament's quite responsive. But that you've got some levers here that are particularly South Australian. And I was just trying to throw into the mix that you wouldn't want to lose sight of that. At a federal level, the payment discussion centres around the Payment Times Reporting Register. That was aimed to be a transparency measure, where I think it was 6,000 of the largest corporations would report on their payment terms, like what they aspired to do, and then their payment performance. The feds have managed to make that so darn complicated and so opaque. My agency is the only one that can make head nor tail of that data, and that's because we've got some of the nation's leading data scientists working on it. So it's not served that purpose. Having said that though, 40% of the disputes that we deal with are payment related. So there's stuff going on in the economy where people just aren't being paid, and then there's stuff going on in some sectors like yours where the payment terms are bloody awful to begin with, and that could be improved. So yeah, but that's a South Australian lever, and yeah, just the Federation gives you those gifts of some national stuff and then some state-based stuff. So.
Bruce is going to hang around for a little while. We've chained him here.
Unless you want me to go.
It's my job to keep the trains running on time. I can't thank you for such a generous and enlightening and really down-to-earth sort of presentation. Availability to have more conversation during the break. I think we need to change your bio, though, to a trash-talking, fish-burger-eating, Monty Python quoting Richmond supporter of the long-suffering, bodacious Mrs. B.
Thanks, everybody.
So thank you so much, Mr. Bruce Billson.